$26 million is going towards 17 clean energy projects across Alberta and Saskatchewan.
Here's what this funding looks like on the ground. Indigenous-led renewable power with battery storage projects that strengthen energy reliability and affordability. Solar and wind projects led by Indigenous partners that are creating jobs and long-term revenue for their communities.
We see it as a foundation for many more projects that will continue to grow Indigenous capacity and leadership in Canada's clean energy future.
The clean energy announcement comes just days after Alberta and the federal government signed the pipeline deal.
Canada is quietly making a decision that could change the balance of energy in North America. This move could strengthen Canada's economy, create more clean energy jobs, and give the country greater control over its own future while reducing American influence. For the United States, it could mean losing some of its influence as Canada becomes more self-reliant and competitive in the energy sector. In July 2026, at the Calgary Stampede, in the heart of Canada's oil and gas province, Energy and Natural Resources Minister Tim Hodgson announced more than $26 million in federal funding for 17 clean energy projects across Alberta, Saskatchewan. The location was deliberate. Alberta and Saskatchewan are Canada's two primary fossil fuel producing provinces, and this was a federal government making clean energy investments inside that landscape rather than outside it. The announcement is one draw from a $4.5 billion program, and it points toward a grid transformation that will shape Canada's electricity system for decades. The 17 projects funded in this announcement fall into 4 documented categories. The largest allocation is $14.9 million for 10 projects covering energy storage, solar and wind energy development, interprovincial electricity transmission planning, Indigenous-led clean energy projects, and workforce development. The second allocation is $5.9 million for engineering and design work on 2 facilities that will convert waste biomass to renewable natural gas with carbon capture technology that takes agricultural forestry waste, converts it to gas through anaerobic digestion or gasification, and then captures the carbon emissions from that conversion to produce what proponents classify as carbon-negative fuel. The third allocation is $3.5 million for 2 projects reducing methane emissions from upstream oil and gas operations and advancing low-emissions cement alternatives that permanently store carbon. The fourth is $2.3 million for 3 projects supporting higher energy efficiency building codes. The federal funding mechanism behind these investments is the Smart Renewables and Electrification Pathways Program, SREPS, a $4.5 billion federal program designed to support grid modernization, energy storage, and renewable energy technologies in every region of Canada. The program's mandate is to help grow Canada's electricity grid in a sustainable, affordable, and reliable manner. The July 4th announcement represents one of many regional draws from that program, with SREPS also having funded projects in British Columbia, Ontario, Quebec, and the Atlantic provinces as the program advances its national mandate. Indigenous Services Canada contributed an additional $649,000 specifically to electricity projects led by Indigenous groups advancing pre-development work for solar energy initiatives, a separate funding stream routed through a different federal department and targeted specifically at Indigenous community energy self-determination. The July 4th announcement builds directly on a June 26th commitment at the Energy and Mine Ministers Conference, a federal-provincial forum convening energy ministers from across the country where the federal government committed support to 4 interprovincial electricity transmission intertie projects linking Yukon with British Columbia, Alberta with British Columbia, Alberta with Saskatchewan, and Saskatchewan with Manitoba. Those 4 transmission links are the physical infrastructure that converts Canada's regionally fragmented electricity grid into an integrated continental system capable of moving clean electricity from the provinces with surplus, renewable generation to the provinces with deficit. Alberta and Saskatchewan, both historically reliant on natural gas and coal for electricity generation, connect to BC's massive hydroelectric surplus through those intertie projects. The interprovincial transmission commitment is what places the July 4th clean energy announcement in its strategic context. A $26 million investment in energy storage, solar, wind, and biomass projects in Alberta and Saskatchewan generates limited additional electricity on its own. The same investment alongside functioning transmission links to BC's hydroelectric grid, becomes a component of a system that can balance variable renewable output against reliable hydro dispatch using BC Hydro as the battery. That stores value when Alberta wind and solar is generating surplus, and discharges when Alberta demand exceeds local renewable supply. The SREP's program's grid modernization mandate is specifically designed to fund the local infrastructure that makes interprovincial transmission economically viable by creating the generation and storage capacity at both ends of the connection. Energy is the backbone of our economy, so by growing and modernizing the systems that we have, we can catalyze investment, generate jobs and prosperity, and build the strongest economy in the G7. Minister Hodgson stated at the Calgary Stampede announcement, "Through these investments, we will stabilize energy costs, reduce emissions, and lay the foundation for long-term economic growth." Canada's National Electricity Strategy, titled Powering Canada, strong targets doubling the capacity of the national electricity grid by 2050, supplying clean, reliable, affordable power across the country for decades to come. Current Canadian grid capacity is approximately 150 gigawatts. Doubling to 300 gigawatts by 2050 requires adding an average of roughly 6 gigawatts of new capacity every year from now until then, a rate of grid expansion that has never been sustained in Canadian history, and that requires the kind of distributed project development the SREP's program is funding across all regions simultaneously. The 17 Alberta and Saskatchewan projects announced July 4th are individual nodes in that national build-out, each one small, each one contributing to the cumulative capacity addition the 2050 target requires. The methane reduction component of the announcement connects the clean energy investment directly to the oil and gas sector, rather than positioning them as competing priorities. Methane, the primary component of natural gas, is a potent greenhouse gas whose leakage from upstream oil and gas operations contributes significantly to Canada's total emissions profile. The $3.5 million allocated to 2 projects, reducing methane from upstream operations, funds technology deployment that reduces the climate impact of continued oil and gas production without requiring those operations to stop. The federal government and Alberta agreed in the May 15th Carney-Smith Implementation Agreement to make substantial methane reductions as part of the broader energy cooperation framework. The July 4th announcement funds specific projects executing on that commitment. The biomass to renewable natural gas projects with carbon capture are the most commercially novel category in the announcement. Biomass gasification with carbon capture, sometimes called BECCS, or bioenergy with carbon capture and storage, is a technology platform that removes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere through plant growth, converts the biomass to energy, and captures the resulting emissions before they are released. The net effect is carbon removal from the atmosphere rather than carbon addition. The $5.9 million for engineering and design work on 2 Saskatchewan and Alberta facilities is pre-commercial. It funds the engineering studies that precede a final investment decision on full scale. Facilities. If the engineering confirms commercial viability, the facilities would represent Canada's first utility-scale BECCS deployment in the Prairie provinces, in a region with both the biomass feedstock from agricultural residues and the geological formations required for carbon storage. The Energy Innovation Program, the federal funding vehicle for the methane and cement projects, advances clean energy technologies that help Canada maintain a competitive, reliable, and affordable energy system while transitioning to a lower carbon economy. The Code's Acceleration Fund supports the building efficiency projects. Together, 3 separate federal programs contributed to the 17 projects, reflecting an investment strategy that distributes clean energy funding across multiple programmatic vehicles rather than concentrating it in a single instrument.